Hi, this is Mark Arnold with another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. And today I have a special guest. She is an author and a lot of other things that she talks about in her new book called My Peacock Tale. Her name is Shelley Herman. How are you?
I'm glad you think I'm something fun.
So I know where you hailed from in the past because you said you grew up in Agora, and Calabasas,
At the time
California.
at the time
Yeah,
when both of those areas it was like a two-lane highway to get there. It was a
I bet.
very rural area. It's about 30 miles outside of Los Angeles.
Wow.
And now it's a very, foo-foo area.
So where do you hail from now? Same area or somewhere else?
I'm living a little closer to town now. I'm in an area named Valley Village, which is the fancy pants name for North Hollywood.
Okay. All right. So, you did something that me, as similar interests was kind of wanted to do, but I grew up in Northern California and then I didn't grow up in Southern California. So, it's just pipe dreams to be a page for NBC and working for the big studios. I did work for a TV station in San Francisco, but anyway, was that your goal growing up? Is I want to be on TV or work in TV or be involved with TV or movies or entertainment or what?
I always wanted to be involved in the entertainment industry. I was very lucky because at Agora High School, when I was there, I was a theater geek, and we had a lot of fun, and we colored outside the lines a lot, and we're very creative. It was encouraged. So I was very lucky that a group of us went to a taping of the Midnight Special, which was a big deal at the time, a late night rock concert show that was on NBC.
Hmm.
And I saw these people standing around wearing these ugly polyester uniforms who were getting paid to listen to rock and roll music all day. And at that point, the only thing I had on my resume was volunteering at a local theater in our community. And I thought, well, gee, I've got volunteer experience ushering. I could get a job as a page. And as you know, because it's one of those aspirational jobs for a lot of people, it's very difficult to get in. Um, they say that it's easier to get into Harvard than it is to be a page at NBC. But I was very lucky because, and I detail it in the first chapter of My Peacock Tale, Secrets of an NBC Page. I was working at Sears, and a bunch of girls and I got together, and one of the girls got free tickets to see Elvis in Las Vegas. So we all went there, had this great girl road trip, and one of the girl who got us the tickets was saying, so what do you want to do after Sears? Because I would hoped there would be life after Sears. And I said I wanted to be a page at NBC, and she said, well, my mom's best friend is working in compliance and practices. And those are the people that make sure the game shows are on the up and up.
Right.
And I thought, well, that's great. And, a lot of people say they're going to do things for you and they don't always come through. But sure enough, Jean Messerschmidt was her name. She came into Sears to see me in the junior bazaar department, hanging up clothes on racks. And we chatted a bit. 2 weeks later, I had the job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think that as it were, helped the situation or?
It couldn't have hoit.
Ah,
Because I had not even applied for a job at NBC at that point because
mhm.
the rules presently are you have to at least have your Bachelor of Science degree or a Bachelor of Arts degree. And now online, they make you do like a 2-minute video and then they'll interview you in a forum such as this. And then if they're really, really interested in hiring you, which would be either in Los Angeles or New York, they'll fly you there on
Mhm,
their nickel and put you up at a hotel so they can interview you in person. So that's how
mhm.
determined they are to get good people because the Page program has been in existence for 90 years and it was set up as kind of an executive training program, meaning
Mhm.
it was all guys back in the day. And and some of those guys were were Regis Philbin, Gene Rayburn,
Hmm.
Chuck Barris, some actors like Richard Benjamin, newsmen like Hugh Downs.
Hmm.
So it really was a great way to get your foot in the door. So
Hmm.
I encourage anybody who's interested in knowing more about it to go to the NBC Page website and learn about it, because it might take a couple of months, maybe a year to get in, but try to get in.
Okay. Now I know what it is because as I said before the show, I have a broadcasting degree and I knew about such things. But to the layman out there, layperson out there, uh, what does a page do? What are the responsibilities? At least when you were one, it might have changed over the years.
Well, it has changed, sadly, because where I once worked at 3000 West Alameda in Burbank, home to Johnny Carson, Midnight Special, Hollywood Squares, Sanford and Son, Chico and the Man, Days of Our Lives, on and on and on and on.
Mhm.
NBC doesn't own that facility anymore. But
Oh,
when I worked there, um, and this is the way it runs in New York as well, the jobs of the pages, you have 18 months, and in that time, you give tours of the facility
mm,
and you usher the TV shows. And then when they know that you can walk and chew gum at the same time, they actually kind of give you better assignments. Some of the really fun ones are taking limousines to the airport to greet some of the NBC talent or executives. And then, like, you've got them in the car. And so, if you want to ask them questions and do things, you've got a really good opportunity. I mean, what's a couple of my page friends, and it's a sweet chapter in the book. They got to be with Gilda Radner,
mm,
and she wrote a sweet little letter. It's in the book too, but they had
mhm.
an adventure because you're supposed to, like, in this case of this one, they were supposed to take Gilda to the airport, but she had about 4 hours before she had to get to her flight. So my friend Pete and two of the women pages escorted Gilda all around Hollywood because she'd never been to Hollywood before. So they went to the Chinese Theater and Griffith Park and into Westwood. She ate donuts and falafels and got the crumbs all over her. She met her fiance's parents. She didn't wind up marrying the guy, but they were in the Fairfax area. And sure enough, as they were driving her to get to her airplane, Pete's car ran out of gas, and I mean, they were like totally freaking out.
Mhm.
And so Pete, being the gentleman that he is, he sat behind the steering wheel of the car and had the two page girls and Gilda pushing the car to the gas station.
Wow.
And he saw his career flash before his eyes, but it turns out that Gilda wrote that lovely thank you note that just shows you how wonderful she was and how grateful she was to the pages. But the pages sometimes had to, I say we were ambassadors, but we had to cover up some things sometimes the talent did, like on a New Year's Eve. We'd have to pick people up to take them to the Rose Parade, and some of them were not feeling well after partying a little too much.
Mhm.
I had one instance where I was taking one of the talent to the airport, and on the way there, he wanted to stop by Jack's house on Mulholland Drive to get a little Peruvian marching powder.
Mm.
And I just said, no, 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 we're not stopping. And I mean, I would have loved to have met Jack Nicholson, but I just thought that's all I need is to get this guy on the plane and he's carrying cocaine or something. I just like, no, 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 no. So we had a lot of it. I mean, there's one, I haven't told this one on any podcast before, but one of the pages um, went to pick up Chuck Woolery, who used to be the host of Wheel of Fortune before
Right.
Pat Sajak took it
Mhm.
over. And Dinah's in the limo, pulls up to his house, and his wife, who was actress Joanne Flug at the time,
Mhm.
is throwing all of his stuff out on the front lawn, and she's cussing at him. And Chuck jumps in the limo, and he says to the limo driver, "Step on it!" And
Wow.
turns to my friend Dinah and says, "You didn't see any of this."
Wow.
So we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of experiences. I mean, good experiences as well as weird
Mhm.
ones.
Now you said it lasts approximately 18 months. So what is the goal after it's all done? I mean, it's like, are you trying to become a manager of NBC, let's say, or is it just good resume material, or what does it lead you to do if you?
Me personally, I was hoping to get into management. I would like to have gone on to work in development, whether it was prime time or daytime. I was very interested in that because I come from a background primarily being a writer. Although
Hmm.
I've worked on camera quite a bit, it was always the writing that seemed to be the thing that was like, oh, okay, you can write. Well, why don't you say your own words and go get on camera? But
Hmm.
another story from the book, um, at the time, Dick Ebersol was like the young wunderkind executive. He and Lorne Michaels are the people that got Saturday Night Live started. And I thought if I met Dick Ebersol, man, that's it. I'd be in, because I share his vision of NBC.
Hmm.
And his secretary would not set an appointment for me to meet him. And I mean, part of the thing of a page, you're supposed to network with people and try to, get the next rung of the ladder up.
Hmm.
So I'm driving home very late one night from work and listening to talk radio, and they say, and our next guest is Dick Ebersol. Well, I pull off the road. It was raining. I pull into a Shell station and they had a payphone there. I kept shoving quarters into this payphone. And the call screener says, what do you want to talk to Dick Ebersol about? And I was like, oh, I want to ask something about Saturday Night Live. And they went, okay. And so they put me on and they say, okay, caller, what would you like to ask Dick Ebersol? And I said, hi, my name is Shelley Herman and I'm a page at NBC Burbank. And I've been trying to get an appointment to see you so that I can talk to you so that I could work with you someday. So will you promise me on the air right here, right now, that you'll make an appointment to see me? And he said, yes.
Oh. And did anything good come out of that appointment, or did he?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Because the first thing he said was, my advice to you is to leave NBC.
Wow.
And it's like, I just got here. And he said that they would value me more if I had outside experience and was able to bring that to
Yeah.
NBC.
I
So,
had the same issue, but anyway, I can tell that later.
so somebody blew you off that way too?
Well, yes. I'll tell my story quickly. It's like, so I did not grow up in Southern California. I did live there a couple of years when I was a kid, but I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. Got a job at KBHK TV 44 out of college, and I wanted to keep going up the ranks and in the business side of things. And at one point, I wanted to be a sales rep, and they were paid a lot of money back in
Oh,
those
yeah.
days. And the guy that was a sales manager, he liked me and everything, but he says, "No, leave." And I go, "What?" And he says, "Leave. Go work at Channel 20, that was one of the local stations, or Channel 2 or somewhere else, and then come back." And I go, "If I leave, I don't want to come back." I'll be working over there. And he goes, "Well, I don't care. You need more experience." It sounds like the same situation. And like, it boggled my mind. It's like, you have me here. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way with Ebersol. It's like, hey, I'm young and hungry and stupid enough to, do this. Train me, teach me, mentor me. I'll be your person. But I guess a lot of people wanted to be his person that way.
yeah. They want you to work for it anyway.
Well, and as I've learned, if you work for free, you can work all the time. So I was really willing to, put in the long hours and do all the grunt work, but
Yeah.
it just wasn't my time yet.
That was one of my questions I was going to ask is, do they pay you as a page, or is it just like perks and stuff like that, or
I
how's that?
made a buck 90 an hour. Thank you very
Woohoo!
much.
Well, it's
Yes.
better than nothing.
And when I left, it had gone up to 225. And the
Uh-huh.
reason I remember it is because when I moved into my first apartment, it was $225 a month. So that's how I remember that figure.
Hmm. And what years were you there? Based on the picture, it looks like early 70s, mid 70s, roughly.
I began there June 21st, 1976,
Hmm.
the longest day. And I stayed on a little bit longer than 18 months because in the middle of my pagedom, I broke my foot.
Oh.
So I couldn't give tours or usher the TV shows. So they put me in the story department
Hmm.
where I was reading scripts and novels and memoirs and things to see if any of these projects might be something good to turn into TV movies for NBC.
Hmm. So I might have toured NBC when you were a page.
I deny everything I said. I mean,
Because
we did lie.
sometime
We did lie a little bit. I have to admit that.
at some point in the late 70s, my family went to the NBC tour because I wanted to go. And, but I have no idea who led the tour. It could have been you for all I know. But
Did
um,
you see any shows while you were there?
no, but it was during the day and everything was like, not in production at that moment. But what interested me, is, and I'm sure everybody has said similar things to this once they see it. It's like, so you go to the Tonight Show set, and on TV it looked huge. You got Johnny over here, and the drape here, and the band over here, and when you're in there, it's like Johnny's table, the drape, and the band. It's like so tiny. And then they weren't filming Hollywood Squares that week or that time of the year. It might have been in the summer. This is probably why everything was shut down. I don't even remember what time of year it was, but and I said, "Wow, the Hollywood Squares are tiny." It's like there's no headroom if you're a tall person, you know. And,
And they were really hot to sit in those little squares too, because
yeah.
each of those squares were individually lit,
Hmm.
and they had to get like little portable fans at a certain point because
Mm.
people in the early days were starting to pass out sitting in there. 'Cause you had your light in your square, and then you had the studio lights also.
Yeah.
No,
And the other,
there's an old story that we would tell on the tour. Um, and as you can vouch for the fact, the Hollywood Square set was a giant tic-tac-toe board.
right.
And there's some spiral staircases that led up to it.
Mm.
But rickety is probably the best word to describe it. It wasn't as grandiose as it looks on television.
Yeah.
And on stage four, where they usually taped Hollywood Squares, a long time ago, there had been a pool that had been built there for
Mm.
Esther Williams.
Oh yeah.
That was one, that
Yeah.
was one of those things. Like, if you could go into Studio 4, you wouldn't see where they had a pool because now there's a floor over it, but
Right.
people still seem fascinated. And the 1971 earthquakes were starting to happen,
Hmm.
February of 71. And sure enough, they were in the middle of taping one afternoon, and there was a big aftershock. And man, those people couldn't get out of that fast enough because they all knew this whole thing could collapse into the swimming pool.
Wow. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it wasn't set up, like I said. It was just sitting there like off to the side. Like I said, it's probably summer hiatus, and so they just had it off to the side. So you could stand next to it, and it's like you go, "Wow, this thing's short." You know.
Yeah.
Um, the third thing I remember from that tour is I used to be a big fan of the Gong Show back in those days, and the gentleman, I forget his real name, but he played Gene the dancing machine on the
Yes.
show, and then I saw him sweeping up, and I said, "Oh my God, he's just sweeping up. He's not like anybody, And it's like,
Gene was a
yeah,
maintenance guy.
yeah,
I'm going to run off here for 2 seconds
okay.
because I don't know if you're aware of this, and I would love for you to meet I don't know if does this show up backwards on your screen?
No, it says Gong this book, so it looks fine.
My
Yeah.
friend Adam Needif just wrote this book.
Oh,
It just came
I'm
out
aware
this
of
month.
him. I've never
Yeah.
interviewed him, but okay.
Adam's a really good friend,
Hmm.
and he's actually going to moderate a panel for me on February 10th. He'll
Hmm.
have moderated it.
Yeah.
And he Gene was a maintenance guy, and a lot of times if the Gong Show acts were if they gonged a whole bunch of people, they had leftover time,
Right.
they'd have to figure out something to do, and Chuck would often throw many of us from NBC on stage to do something silly to kill time.
Uh-huh.
And Gene's nickname before he became Gene the Dancing Machine was Hat, because he
Hmm.
always wore that, and he
Oh yeah, yeah,
did
yeah.
his little shuffle dance. Um, Chuck pulled me on stage once. I was giving it to, well, I have to back it up a little bit
Then I
because
probably saw you because I Gong Show was a show I did not miss. at that
Well,
age, so I
here
probably
is
saw everything.
it's an
Yeah.
Adams book. I don't know how
And
well
I
it.
probably need this book. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's me shaking hands with Chuck.
Okay.
It's in Adam's book. I have another picture in my book too, but I gave him this picture. But
Hmm.
I'm giving a tour once, and one of the pages comes up to me and says, "Quick, Chuck Barris needs you. Quick, get over to stage 4." And I was like, "Oh, what did I do wrong?" was my first thought. And I quick went over there,
Hmm.
and he was standing backstage behind the curtain, and he said, "Just stand here and walk out when the curtain comes up. You'll know what to do." Uh. So I was standing with several other women who worked at NBC, people that were, sound women painting the sets, people that were non-traditional jobs, I would say, for
Hmm.
women to have. So the curtain comes up and we all walk out, and Chuck is like, "Here are the women from NBC. Girls, introduce yourselves." And we all shook hands with each other. So that was the bit. But I had known Chuck Barris because in 1972, when I was still in high school, I was a contestant on the dating game.
I was going to ask you about that, and I
Yeah.
didn't even think about that. I was like, oh yeah, Chuck Berry, same guy who created that show and Newlywed Game and all those other ones. But yeah,
Yeah, he was like, we're both born in Philly.
uh,
He had a daughter, Della, at the time, who was, I think she like 12 or 13, and we kind of looked similar to one another.
hmm.
And he was just a big love. He was as goofy and wacky. I hate to destroy your illusions, but he was a very smart, nice man who I adored.
Hmm.
And he very creative. A lot of people just think of him as trashy TV, but look at all these years later, we're still talking about him.
What's the real Chuck Barris? I mean, it's like I always thought he kind of was himself on the Gong Show, but sometimes people aren't. So was he like that, or was he more serious, or was he, like later he had like that there's a book and movie like he said he was working with the FBI or something like that,
I can't confirm or deny that. I'll tell you, he was um he was a very intelligent man.
Okay.
He in addition to all of his game shows and stuff, you might not know this, he wrote the Freddie Boom Boom Cannon song Palisades Park.
Yes, I did.
He was good friends with Dick Clark. Both of them started out in Philadelphia. But when he was developing other game show ideas, he wasn't goofy Chuck. He was like laser focused
Okay.
on, okay, this element works, that element doesn't work. Oh, let's try that again. He would roll up his sleeves and really work on things. For the Gong Show, uh, I would sit in on the audition sometimes because while I wasn't, I was on the show twice. I didn't continue my friendships with the guys that I won on the show, but I started dating somebody on the staff for Chuck Barris's company. And this will make you pea green with envy. Um, he and I went to see a live version of the Rocky Horror Show
Wow.
at the Roxy Theater
Wow.
on the Sunset Strip
Mhm.
with Tim Curry.
Ooh.
Hello.
Is this
So
before? No, was this before or after the movie came out?
way before the movie.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So this would have been 73
Okay.
we
Okay.
went.
Okay.
So so Vince would invite me down to watch some of the auditions sometimes, and I would see Chuck working with the people, some of whom were very, very good, and he would give them little tips on, you know what, if you just tried this and maybe goose it a little bit, yeah, you've got a real shot at the show.
Mhm.
Conversely, there might be people who came in who were a little bit destitute and maybe just needed a little money to be on the show,
Yeah.
and he would help them be goofier with their
Mhm.
acts.
Mhm.
So he was hosting, he's producing in his head, he's writing. Um, he could do it all, and there's no reason why we don't understand how it could only last for so long because that flame burned fast and burned hot.
Right. But I mean, it is funny that the Gong Show, and I should talk to Adam about this, but
I'll
you
give you
know,
his contact
okay,
information.
very good. I wrote it down, his name too, because I said, oh, he's written other game show books, right? Match Game and stuff like that. Okay, so I just have
Match Game,
never
he wrote.
reached.
Oh, can have this will be a teaser for your listeners. Ask him about his Alan Ludden book
Okay.
and how he sent it to Betty White and how he got it back. It's a great story.
Okay. All right.
Great story.
But the what was I going to say about Gong Show? It was just that, as silly as it was, like Danny Elfman got to start with the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo, and Pee Wee Herman got to start there, I think, and different odd
I
different
think he was
people.
on 9 different times.
Probably the one I remember is he was dressed as an American Indian, just the feather garb and everything, but I don't remember
But
what
see,
he did. Yeah.
there were certain people like the unknown comic Murray
Yeah,
Langston
that's right.
and Paul Rubens,
Yeah.
um, who were professional entertainers,
Hmm.
but because they were members of, at the time it was just the AFTRA Performers Union, and now they've merged with Screen Actors Guild.
Right.
But Chuck wanted to use the professionals because he knew he could get a good performance out of them. But not only would they get paid for their appearances on the show, when the show went into reruns, they got more money for residuals also.
Hmm.
So Chuck was helping these people out a lot too.
Hmm. So now you mentioned the dating game, and I will say this. I don't have a copy of your book. I need to get a copy of it, but at some point. But I did look on your website, and you had like a 2-minute video that shows like pictures and other things from the book, which is where I got most of my information. So I did see that you were on the dating game and everything like that. And you mentioned Supermarket Sweep. I don't know if you were on any other game shows. You didn't mention them, but
No, I
uh,
wrote for Supermarket Sweep.
oh, okay.
No, I
But
that was a
going back to the dating game. So that your first TV appearance? And if so, or even if not, how did you get on a show like Dating Game?
well, I again back to Agora High School.
Mhm,
I was 17, so
mhm,
I was a so a junior, probably a junior at the time. But some of the older kids were trying out for the dating game, and I thought, well, if they're going to do it, why don't I try to do it too? I'd like to go on a vacation.
mhm,
So I went down to they had their offices on Vine Street in Hollywood,
mhm,
and they had it set up in such a way that maybe about 12 girls at a time would sit on one side, and they'd have a curtain, and then like 12 guys would sit on the other side, and one of the producers of the dating game would act as the host and kind of go round robin, and we'd ask questions that we made up ourselves. uh, and they would, do like, it was, if anything, it was like a personality test. And they would see if we looked like we were paying attention and if we were laughing at the right times. And, that was simple for me. And
mhm.
plus, I think I had hair down to my butt at the time and I looked hot. So,
Um,
so that didn't hurt either.
so did you have to be anybody or just be personable, I guess, as a contestant on that show or whatever?
Both times I did a daytime and the nighttime version.
Uh-huh.
They really wanted us to be ourselves.
Mhm,
And once I was selected to be on the show, I would sit down with the writers and they would craft questions that would somehow show something about my personality.
mhm.
So one of the things was I was a salad bar hostess at a restaurant. So I was always filling up all of the vegetables and everything for the salad. So they wrote a salad bar question. I think they wrote a question about roller skating because I liked to roller skate back then because
Mhm.
everybody was roller skating back then. So no, they really wanted that out of.
Okay.
I wasn't a hired hand at that point.
Mm.
They just wanted real people.
Okay. I was just always curious about that because I watched it as a kid, but I didn't know how it worked. And then years later, you find out certain celebrities got their start on the show kind of as a springboard, and I go, well, that's kind of interesting. Now, the other question about the show is, were you required to go on the date? I mean, if you really thought that the guy was a dog or something, did you still have to go on the date?
Um, both of the men that I won, We're very nice guys.
Uh,
The first trip I won was to San Diego, which is about a 2-hour drive from my house.
mhm,
And but I think they flew us down there.
mm.
So that was like, ooh. And the guy wasn't that thrilled because his parents had a vacation home near there, so it wasn't a big deal
Oh,
for
well.
him. This the second trip I won was to the Bahamas.
Hmm.
And I won the guy and gave him a big hug, and I whispered in his ear, "Where are the Bahamas?" I had no idea.
Ooh.
I just my fear at the time was that I'd have to get a passport, and I didn't have enough money to get a passport. You know, I was like, so I was glad I didn't need a passport at the time to go to the
Hmm,
Bahamas.
hmm,
And he kind of took off and was hanging with a lot of other people at the time. And I learned to scuba dive. I met some people that up until about 10 years ago we were exchanging Christmas cards. It worked out really nice for me to be on the trip, except I had a chaperone because I was 18 years old. Any woman under 21 had to have a female chaperone who would sleep in the same room for their insurance purposes.
mhm.
And they gave me somebody's old grandma as a chaperone. And she was very drunk most of the time. And when she slept in the twin bed next to me, she snored horribly. And so one night I decided I'd go sleep out on the balcony. And then there was like lightning and thunder. And I thought, well, this is stupid.
Mhm.
So I slept in the closet. I got the pillows and the blankets and closed the closet door. And it's the only way I could sleep for a couple nights.
Hmm. Wow. So you mentioned I'm gonna be jumping around a little bit, but you
Sure.
mentioned supermarket sweepstake. You said you're a
Supermarket
writer on it?
sweep. Yeah.
Supermarket sweep, yeah. Ugh. How did you get that gig?
For people who know the game show world, uh, there was a man who was a very close friend of my husband's and mine named Fred Wasbrock.
Hmm,
And Fred has written several of these encyclopedia of game show books, was agent to Adam West, a lot of what he liked to call the icons of television, meaning the older people who had a hard time getting jobs.
right.
And he was kind of like Broadway Danny Rose that way. He loved these guys. He helped get them work. Uh, and so Fred and I both had this love of game shows.
Mhm,
And he said, "Can I try to represent you and be your agent?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." So he introduced me to Al Howard, who
mhm.
created Supermarket Sweep. And I purposefully went in. I was wearing a black top and I wore a big skirt that had food all over it. Not that I ate the food, but it was pictures of food all over it. And proceeded to tell him how fabulous I was, and I had good energy.
Mhm,
And because Al and Fred got along, they gave me a shot at doing it.
mhm.
And you say like, "Oh, people write game shows," ooh, but we had to write all the puzzles
Hmm,
at the beginning of the show that would give people the time that they would accumulate so they could run around the grocery store
right.
for the bonus round.
Mhm,
And then after they would do the bonus round, an editor would cut that um, so that then I would get the tape of that bonus round when it was fully edited, and then I would have to write kind of like if you're doing a horse race. It,
ah, okay.
and so is coming around here, and they bent down and oh, and he fell, and so I had to write like I was
Wow. I
Santa
never
Anita.
I never knew that was written.
Yeah, that was all written.
Never really thought about it, you know. So hey, what a great gig.
Well, it was a great gig, and it was also the gig where I was there during 9/11.
Mm,
And like so many people, I stayed home that morning,
mhm.
and I get a call from Al Howard. "Where are you? Why aren't you at work?" And and one of the things they said specifically was um, all non-essential personnel at any media outlet should stay home because they were afraid that those would be targets for the terrorists.
Right.
And he's "No, get to work. Come, we've got to write these sweeps." And and every 5 minutes over the loudspeaker at NBC, and we shot it at NBC in Burbank.
Mhm.
And it's all non-essential personnel, please leave the facility immediately. And he bent down to pick up Bertolli olive oil and came up with,
Wow.
good times. Good
Mhm.
times.
Then going back to your little video, there's one thing that kind of caught my eye. It's another dating thing. You were Eric Estrada's date. What was that circumstance and what caused that?
Well, that was one of my jobs as a page.
Okay.
No, not to be his date,
No.
but I picked Eric up at his apartment, little apartment in the valley. He was very excited to be in the limousine, and took him to Universal Studios, and he was dressed in his street clothes in the picture that you're referencing, which people can go to my website, mypeacocktale.com, to see the picture that we're speaking of. And he was wearing his regular clothes, and I was wearing a t-shirt, and it said on the t-shirt like NBC affiliate relations or something. So
Mhm,
they knew I was official. So it looked like we were just like in normal streetwear.
mhm,
And Eric gets into the little green room area before meeting the press, because this is when Chips premiered.
mhm.
And they said to him, and here's your Chips uniform to wear so that you can meet the press. And he says, I'm not going to wear that. I'm going to wear my own clothes. That's how I want to meet the press. I want to have them see me, not the character. And meanwhile, Larry Wilcox walks in and he's already wearing his uniform.
Yep.
And they said, well, then Larry can go meet the press if you don't want to do this. So Eric put on his uniform and looked very dashing in it. So when they went off, did their press thing, took him in the limousine home. And my sister's working like at a local drugstore. This is several months later. And somebody's thumbing through it and says, do you have a sister named Shelley? Yeah. Did you know she's dating Eric Estrada? And it said I was one of his favorite dates in like Tiger Beat magazine or something. And I just so my sister calls me and she says, I can't believe you didn't tell me you were dating Eric Estrada. I went, I'm not. So it was good for a few laughs.
Okay. I was like, "Whoa, that's that's a switch, whatever." Um, let's see. You mentioned a few other people, so I'll kind of rattle them off that are in the video. Obvious, the cover, Johnny Carson. Were you close with him? Did you ever? I think there's a photo of you on the cover there. Is he
Yeah.
doing the stump the band, or what was he doing at that
That's it. We
picture?
were doing Stump the Band.
Okay, all right.
And that was something that would occur. Sometimes it had been planned, and sometimes if a guest was stuck in traffic or canceled at the last minute for some reason, maybe their flight didn't come in or something, and they
Mm-hmm,
needed to fill a little bit of time,
mm-hmm,
they would do Stump the Band.
mm-hmm,
So the people who were the talent coordinators on the show would go out on the line of people waiting to come in to see the show and go, hey, does anybody have a silly song? And then we would purposefully sit them down in the front area there,
okay.
so that Johnny could pick them. And there'd be the talent coordinators off camera going like, and guiding him to what the better songs were.
Hmm,
So if you were the page working that day who had the most seniority on that crew, then you're the one that got selected to be on the show. But one of the things they
okay.
would tell us, if you're looking at the picture, they would say stand one step above Johnny,
Uh-huh.
and um, try not to get in the way. Well, that's like putting a flag in front of a bull for me. And I had my page friends standing off camera, and they were saying, the same thing about go to the left a little bit. You step up one more, and we can see you better on camera. Because back in the day, we didn't have videotape machines,
Mhm,
so this was going to be my shot at being on the Tonight Show.
right.
And my friend Paul Drinkwater took that photo. He was a staff photographer. Johnny signed it.
Mhm,
And as soon as the show was over, because they would tape at 5:30 every day,
right.
they'd either be out at 6:30 for the 60-minute version, or when they were doing 90-minute, they'd be out at 7 o'clock.
Mhm,
And so as soon as it was over, I got on the phone and called my mother, and then she called friends and everybody. That's how everybody was able to watch it. But we all watched out for each other that way. The one thing about the Pages, you might think it was like, oh, well, everybody's trying to get a job in showbiz. They're all cutthroat and they're
Yeah.
horrible people. But no, we were like the best fraternity or sorority that you could ever be a part of. Everybody to this day,
Hmm.
everybody is still really supportive of each other. And I have
Hmm.
a core group of friends. There's about 12 of us, and we
Hmm.
get together about once a month, to watch award shows or celebrate birthdays or, go to our parents'
Hmm.
funerals. There's all of these life experiences we've had over 4 decades. It's
Hmm.
it's really been a blessing to have known these people.
Hmm. Did any of those people continue on in the industry, or they just did the Page thing and moved on in their lives?
Some of them said, I don't want to be in showbiz anymore.
Wow.
Because it isn't steady work all the time. And
Hmm.
even though we were in this rarefied atmosphere, not other jobs are as nice as working at NBC. And I think people kind of got burnt out with some of them.
Hmm.
One of the people I worked with is named Pete Hammond. He
Hmm.
writes for Deadline Hollywood. He's
Hmm.
very, very influential and very successful in the motion picture reviewing, critiquing, promoting business. We've had Courtney Conti was the CEO or COO of some of these companies like Carsey Warner, and he worked with Roseanne and Brett Butler and Sybil Shepherd, and that's enough right there.
Hmm.
A lot of people went into writing. A few
Hmm.
people became actors. Um, some went into like just being like what they call unit managers, like kind of working as a liaison between NBC and the production companies to make sure that the facilities were taken care of. Tommy Patino stayed on for, gosh, he did the Tonight Show and Jay Leno's version, and then Conan's version, and then Jay's again of the Tonight Show. So
Yeah.
some of them stayed on as lifers at NBC.
Hmm. Okay. Another question that kind of came across my mind, because he's written a similar book, but I don't know if you know this person, Herbie J. Pilato.
I know Herbie.
Okay, all right. Did you work
Herbie
together at
is
the same time,
We did
or?
not work
Oh,
together at the same
okay,
time.
okay.
Herbie is such a lover of television
Hmm.
and preserving the goodness of television.
Hmm.
And while his book is a very happy-go-lucky tale of working at NBC, mine's a little darker and mine's a little naughtier.
Hmm.
There's some sexy stuff in my book.
Hmm.
But I like Herbie, and we run into each other every once in a while, and I have nothing but good things to say about Herbie.
All right, all right. I didn't know if you worked together, but if you know him, that's
No,
half the
he's
battle.
he's a little younger than I am.
Okay. He's been on this podcast, so I think he was promoting. Actually, I kind of just talked about all his different books. His Bionic, Super $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman
And his
book, and
Elizabeth
and
Montgomery
and
books.
that one, The Bewitched, and all those other ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No,
So we just kind of covered it all. So, but that's
no,
kind of
he's
what I
he's a
do.
really good
Yeah.
guy. And for people
Mhm.
who truly appreciate
Mhm.
those particular entertainers or like $6 Million Man,
Mhm.
I would urge them to get his books because he's very
Yeah.
thorough and he's very good at what he does.
Yes. And if he wants to be on the show again, you can be. I just haven't asked him again.
I'll reach out to him because he has his
Uh,
a new book out too, a
oh,
retro
which one?
TV book.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I'll reach
yeah.
out to Herbie.
Sure.
Sure.
All right, thanks.
Should I just give you
Um,
should I just give you my Rolodex? Should
yeah,
I just
yeah. Well, it's kind of funny on this show, and I don't mind saying it live on the show. It's like sometimes I'm like, I have guest, and then sometimes I'm like, uh, who can I get on the show? And it's like,
Oh yeah.
and I had to reach out to. This was a reach out to Ben Omart of Bear
Uh-huh.
Manor Media, because I said, you have writers all the time are writing about stuff that I talk about on this show all the time. Send them my way. And then I got like inundated at like 12 people. You were one of them. And I go, which is great. So now I'm booked for like the next couple months, but it's like, there's sometimes like, who am I going to get now? So
Well, and Adam's book was through Bear Media, and I'm not sure if Herbie has done books through Bear Media. I'm not sure if this last one
yeah,
was
but
this.
I'm fine if it's other publishers. I'm not a stickler, it's
But
like,
we all think,
yeah,
in case Ben's watching this,
yes.
we kind of feel like Charlie's Angels because none of us have actually met him before, but he sends us off into the literary
Well,
world.
he is in Japan.
Well, yeah, but we don't Zoom with them, we don't
Yeah,
FaceTime with them. So it's like, pay no attention to that man
yeah.
behind the curtain. We
I know
don't
what he looks like. I'll say that. I've seen a photo. Anyway,
or have you. Or
yes.
have you.
Oh, that's true. Anyway, um, you brought up an interesting point, so I will go there. So you said your book has a little bit more risque, dirty stuff. You don't have to go into that necessarily, but as an NBC page, were you asked to do, or did you do things that were kind of above and beyond the normal Call of Duty and protocol?
Well, I personally had a lovely time with a few gentlemen that
Okay.
was consensual.
Yes.
And I detail one story that is very humorous. Um, we'll just call him the French fry guy. Um, there's that one.
Uh-huh.
I have one where I thought I was having a wonderful, wonderful romance with somebody, and it was really good. And I named him Jake in the book because I couldn't put his real name down because he's a celebrity.
Oh.
And when people say like, "Well, why'd you name him Jake?" One, because I was trying to find a name my friends wouldn't guess.
Mhm.
And two, while I was working on the book, there was that Jake from State Farm commercial on.
That's him.
And I thought, Jake, that's a real neutral name. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm going to
yeah,
use Jake.
yeah.
And to digress for a moment, um, the way I got the book title for My Peacock Tale,
Mhm.
uh, I'm listening Saturday morning. Jack Hanna was on talking about wild animals, and I'm typing away trying to do my little book and having noise on in the background, and I'm hearing him talk about peacock's plumage, and I was at Peacock Tail, Tale, and I went to GoDaddy.com and I'm like, is that domain site taken? Is
Yeah.
Instagram available? And in 10 minutes I had everything wrapped up.
Wow.
That's how I
Cool.
got the title of my book.
Mhm. Very cool. I don't know if I do all the websites, but definitely when I write books, I definitely check, does anybody use this title yet? And sometimes, gotta change the title of my book.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I'm like, all right, I grabbed it before anybody else did. Um, but again, beyond, romantic interludes and everything, were you ever asked to, you talked about the one where there was a little bit of the cocaine around or something like that. Were you ever asked to do anything above and beyond the Call of Duty that might have been quasi illegal or anything like that? Or were you free to say no at whatever you wanted to?
I was always free to say no.
Well, that's good.
I didn't get involved in any of the drug culture that was readily available at the time.
Yeah.
I did have what would now be labeled as a Me Too moment with McLean Stevenson that
Ooh.
got pretty scary.
Mm.
And that was something that, even though I was doing my job the same way the men were doing the job, um, I was perceived to have been different. And he had one of those buttons under the desk, let's just start there. And it didn't go well after that.
Interesting. Okay. Is that in
Yeah.
the book?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll read in the book. Okay. There you
But
go.
but read
Leave
the
you
part
viewers
about
at suspense. She
read,
can't
read
tell
the part
everything.
about French fry guy and Jake Moore because
All
those are
right.
good.
Ooh, good, all the
Those
juicy
are those are happy those are happy stories.
Okay. Um, um, let's see. We mentioned Johnny Carson. You mentioned on your little video you showed Joan Rivers and you wrote her some jokes. Is that something you did? Is that right?
Joan was very generous with the pages.
Uh-huh.
There's a couple people in interviewing some of my colleagues for the book. I hadn't known at the time that they were submitting material to her, but she was doing Hollywood Squares quite frequently then. This was before Edgar passed away, so she
Right.
wasn't the center square, but she would come on the show quite a bit. And I wrote some jokes for her, and I wish I could remember them. I can't, but she liked one of them. And I remember very specifically, she said, "This one is good. Come back next week with more." And then she pointed her finger at me. She said, "Come back with more." And I I couldn't think of things. I was a little intimidated by it, but a lot of the other pages did write jokes for Joan, and she paid $7 a joke.
Hmm.
And then one of the pages actually showed me his contract from Joan that it was very informal when I was doing it, but when I guess she was doing more and more of this, and her attorneys made people sign um, like a non-disclosure agreement back in the day that said Joan owns this joke, you can't do this joke anywhere else, and if you do,
Hmm.
you'll be fined a certain amount of money. And it became a little more businessy. But yeah, my Tommy Chasick showed me his contract for it.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. It's like he starts telling the same joke to every performer, and then like, hey, he's doing my joke. So
Yeah, I mean and this was, I think, like the Heidi Abramowitz era of her comedy.
yeah,
So it was easy to write those kind of jokes rather than, Elizabeth Taylor's so fat jokes.
right,
It
right,
was a gentler time.
right. But it was beyond her earlier housewife type jokes, which I
Yeah.
think would be difficult to write, to be honest. But anyway,
Yeah, she was starting to get a little racy at the time,
yeah,
but it was it was a fictional persona that she
right.
was talking about rather than a real person.
Okay. One other person you also show in the little video is Paul McCartney, and how does that fit in with everything, or does it?
Well, this shows you how well the pages bond with each other, because even when some of us weren't working at NBC anymore,
Uh-huh.
we could hit up on the other pages and got like front row seats to the Tonight Show to see McCartney when he was on. I think it was his first time that he
Yeah,
did Tonight Show, and he did not disappoint.
that
Uh,
must have been 84 because I mean he was on in the 60s with Lennon, but Johnny wasn't the host.
and that would have
Uh,
been New York.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was the first time in Burbank. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He was no, he was lovely,
Mhm.
and one of the people got him. He was, a lot of people had memorabilia that they wanted Paul to sign on the way out,
Yeah.
and my friend Steve, who had dated one of the pages,
Mhm.
uh, he got a picture of the church where Lennon and McCartney had first met, and he waved it in front of Paul, and Paul, that caught his eye, more than an
Mhm.
album cover or something, and he reached for the picture and he goes, "That's me church." And he signed the picture and gave it to
Oh.
Steve. So that was really nice. And then there was another a Beatle brush with greatness. Um, One of the pages, Lisa,
Mhm.
uh, and if she's listening, Lisa Lindsay Mattingly. Uh, she was the person in charge of the studio when Ringo was taping a special. It was kind of a take on the Prince and the Pauper, but
Oh
instead,
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, it's on YouTube, but like
Yeah.
Carrie Fisher's in it and John Ritter, and it's
Mhm.
it's a weird little, but we got to
Yeah.
meet Ringo because
Yeah,
of it.
he's
Cool.
Ognorets.
Yeah, which is Ringo spelled backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
So Lisa was answering the phones at the studio, and this woman kept calling and calling saying, put Ringo on the phone. He's my ex-husband. I have to talk to him. If you don't do it, I'll have your job. And finally, Lisa was like really scared at this point. So she knocked on Ringo's dressing room door, and he says, your ex-wife's on the phone. And she said, if you don't come to the phone, she'll have my job. And Ringo looked at her and said, darling, she couldn't do your job.
Very cool.
Yeah, so Lisa went back and said, he said you couldn't do my job. Click.
Going back to Carson for a second, since you mentioned it again, do you know if that episode that you're on is available, like on streaming or anything nowadays? Because they've unearthed a lot of those old recordings in recent times. So I don't know if you've bothered to
I
look.
have a copy of it
Okay.
because Johnny Carson's nephew, his first name is Jeff,
Hmm.
has been so kind and so cooperative about the book. He's allowing me to use a brief clip if I'm promoting my book,
Hmm.
and he gave me the whole thing in color,
Oh wow.
which was really cool. But the picture, this will be a little, writing a book 101. The picture on the front, it has Johnny Carson's signature
Right. I saw
on
that.
it.
Yeah.
So if you're writing a book, you can't just say, oh, I physically have a photo of something, I'll put it in my book.
Yeah.
Because unless you took that photo yourself or have a release for it,
Yeah.
you can't do that, and you could get sued for copyright infringement.
Right.
But because this picture is signed to Shelley, good luck, Johnny Carson, that's considered a gift because
Yeah.
it has my name on it and
Hmm.
he signed it to me. So to confuse matters even more, the Gilda Radner letter that's in the
Yeah.
book,
Yeah.
I desperately wanted to use that letter, but even though she sent it to Pete,
Hmm.
Pete did not legally own that letter. That was Gilda's
Uh,
property. So I'm thinking like, how can I use this letter? And I reached out on Facebook to Alan Zweibel, who was her good friend and wrote a lot with Gilda, but bestest friends.
right.
I said, you don't know me. This is what I want to do. This is the letter. Can you put me in touch with whoever controls Gilda's estate?
Right.
10 minutes later, I have the private email address of Gilda's brother.
Hmm.
And less than an hour later, I had a photo release so I could use that letter in the book.
Cool. Okay. Because I know there's that documentary called Love Gilda, and they showed similar things, like other diaries and letters that she wrote, and I'm sure they got it all cleared for the documentary. So I thought,
Yeah. I have
probably
a
went the
Joan
same route.
Rivers. I have
Yeah.
a Joan
Yeah.
Rivers letter in the book. I got that
Hmm.
cleared from her estate. There's a Johnny Carson letter that was sent to one of the pages. That's
Hmm.
all cleared.
Hmm.
But you learn a lot writing a book. I'll tell
Oh
you
yeah.
that. As you well know.
Yes. One of the other people you mentioned, and I didn't know any details, but you mentioned Betty White earlier, but you mentioned Betty White's mom, Tess. What's the situation on that?
It's so sweet. I hate to like I feel like I'm doing home movies here by doing this, but
That's okay.
I was working as a college intern on the game show Liars Club.
Mm,
So again, being a page, going to college, doing a separate job to try to get my little 3 units of credit. But whenever Betty would be a guest on the game show Liars Club, which was hosted by Alan Ludden, her husband,
mhm,
she would bring her mother, Tess, to
mm.
the tapings. But before each of the tapings, the two of them together would go to the Elizabeth Arden Salon in Beverly Hills, and they'd both get their hair done the same way, and they'd get their nails polished and colored the same way, little pointy fingernails. And then I will attempt to show you this woman over here, the one with the
Mhm.
hairdo. That is Tess White. That is Betty White's mommy.
Okay.
And that's me over there.
Mhm,
And I just thought it was really cool that here's a woman, a professional woman like Betty,
mhm,
doing like take your mom to work day.
mhm,
And Alan's there too, her son-in-law,
mhm.
that they had such a wonderful relationship like that they all felt comfortable with that.
Mm.
So I thought that was really sweet.
So they just had her in the audience. She wasn't really doing anything per se. Yeah.
Oh no,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
she wasn't on the show itself. It was a
Got it.
panel
Okay.
of four
Okay.
celebrities and two civilians playing the game.
Got it. Okay. Then one thing I saw in there is you have hosted a show called The Battle of the Monster Trucks. How did that come about?
And Mudbog Spectacular. Do the full name now.
Okay,
Come
whoops.
on.
All
Come
right.
on.
And mud bogs. I didn't write that part down. Mud. What is it?
Battle of the Monster Trucks and Mudbog Spectacular
Mud
here on
bog.
ESPN.
All right. How did that come about?
I saw an ad in Daily Variety
Hmm.
that said they were looking for a motorsports co-host,
Hmm.
female.
Hmm.
And I've always loved IndyCar racing.
Hmm.
And so of course I thought, going straight to the top, baby. IndyCar racing. I'll be sitting in the pagoda. I'll be calling the races. It'll be great. That wasn't it. But I showed up at the interview and I wore a real tight red jumpsuit and I had big hair. I mean, if anybody's interested, it's on YouTube. They've got me on there. And my red fingernails. Oh boy, was I sexy. Ooh. And I was co-hosting with a man named Brett Kepner, who actually knows what he's talking about. and is still really involved, like with drag racing and things like that. He's a great guy, and he
Hmm.
has a wicked sense of humor,
Mm.
and I appreciated that too. So it was like every other weekend, I would fly from the Los Angeles area to these different venues where they would have these mud bog shows and monster truck shows. And it would usually be in arenas where they would do football during part of the year, but the arenas were empty when it wasn't football season. So they needed something, to bring the folks in. We did a Houston Astrodome, and there was a Tampa Bay, and I mean, really big places. It was awesome. It was exhausting. And if you ever go to any of those monster truck shows or mud bog spectaculars or demolition derbies, just so you know, a lot of the dirt that they fill the stadiums with has a lot of manure in it.
Ooh.
So don't wear your clothes that you value, and maybe wear like a slicker of some kind in case any of the
Mm.
mud gets on you.
Yeah. Ooh.
The more you know.
Yes, exactly. You were an NBC fan. Anyway. Wow. Okay. One last story that I wrote down, and I don't even know what it means, but it probably was on that video too. And then we'll kind of wrap up here. But you mentioned Red Fox and Frank Sinatra and Johnny Cash. I don't know if those are connected, or maybe Fox and Sinatra were. I just wrote down their names.
I'll tell the Johnny Cash story is separate,
Okay.
and that one's a bit of a downer, and then I'll finish with the Sinatra story, which is an upper. How's
Okay.
that?
All right. Sounds good.
My friend Jim McDonald is working as the page assigned to Johnny Cash special. And again, the job is answering the phones, taking messages, being a liaison with the production company. And he gets a phone call, and it's from the governor of Utah. And they are about to execute Gary. What's his name? Oh my gosh. I have to read my own book. Um, there's a guy that they're trying to execute. Shoot. And I mean, everybody that's listening right now to your show is going, she's such an idiot. She didn't read her own book. Gary Gilmore.
Okay.
That's what it is. I didn't open the whole book. I just was looking. Gary
Okay.
Gilmore was about, and it was a big deal aside from being executed. It was the
Hmm.
first time they were executing somebody in the United States by firing squad.
Wow.
And it was his choice to do it that way rather
Hmm.
than a lethal injection or something else. So Jim answers the phone, and the governor says that Gary Gilmore wants to talk to Johnny Cash.
Hmm.
So one of the things that's a big no-no is when tape is rolling and a TV show is being taped, the only person who stops that is the director.
Hmm.
But Jim went in there waving his arms and just like, stop tape, stop tape. And everybody's looking at him. And he whispers into Johnny's ear what's going on.
Hmm.
And Johnny sets his guitar down on the stool and walked out into the hallway and got on the phone with him for about a half hour
Hmm.
and talked to him. And it turns out the two of them had been praying together, and this wasn't the first time they had spoken.
Hmm.
And Johnny went back in and resumed taping. And then when the time for the execution was going to take place, Johnny Cash stopped tape
Hmm.
and had everybody like bow their head for like a moment's of silence because they knew what was going on.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm hoping Gary Gilmore's the right name. If it's not, I apologize. I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what, as I start telling the story, I'm going to about Gary Gilmore. I just saw it. Yes.
Okay.
So
Very
people,
good.
I'm not accusing some poor guy of being executed. The Sinatra story.
Okay.
There was an older woman, mid 80s, that would come to the taping of our shows quite a bit. Sadie O'Sullivan.
Hmm.
And she was kind of a fireball herself. She liked to go to Hollywood Squares, and then we'd always save a seat for her there. And then she liked Sanford and Son. Red Fox starred on that show.
Right.
And there was a bunch of commotion going on at the Tonight Show on stage 1, and Sanford and Son was on stage 3 next door. And she wondered what was going on. And I said, well, Frank Sinatra's next door. And she said, well, Frank Sinatra bailed me out of jail once. And I said, "Oh, really? Do tell, Sadie." And she told the story about how she lived across the street from a venue that was having a luncheon for the American Nazi Party. And this would have been like in the 60s. And although her last name is O'Sullivan, she married an Irishman, but she was a Jewish woman
Mhm.
and just could not fathom the idea of Nazis being in her neighborhood. So she went over there and she hit one of the Nazis with her purse and got sent to jail. So while she's being processed in jail, they said, "Okay, Sadie, you're bailed out." And she goes, "Well, nobody knows I'm here." And she got a telegram that said, "Way to go, Sadie. Love, Francis Albert,"
Hmm.
Frank Sinatra. So she says, "I never had a chance to thank him for that." So I'm like, oh, I can't let this moment go by because I adored her. And I knew Red Fox liked her too. He used to slip her money every once in a while. He kind of thought of her as a good luck charm.
Mhm.
And at the time, if people remember, Red Fox and NBC kind of had a strained relationship.
Mhm.
Johnny Carson got a big window in his office. Red Fox wanted one in his and had to sick out until he got one. So they treated him like a Fabergé egg.
Yeah.
So when perky little Shelley goes and knocks on his door, he wasn't really expecting to see me. He thought it might be like, a director telling him to go out and go to work.
Mhm.
So I looked at Red and I didn't know him. And I said, "Hi, do you know Frank Sinatra?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Do you guys get along?" "Yeah." So I told him the Sadie story. And he held up taping of Sanford and Son and went out, got Sadie, brought her back to the green room at the Tonight Show
Mhm.
so that she could thank Frank.
Hmm.
And I said, "So Sadie, did you get Frank's autograph?" And she goes, "No, no, no. I knew Red had to get back to work. I didn't want to take up too much time."
Hmm.
So Red went back and did the show, and Sadie was sitting there in the audience watching. So I kind
Oh,
of I kind of like those little moments that we could do as, little brush with greatness moments.
yes. That's a good story. I'll say
Yeah.
we'll leave it there at a good story, like you said. Um, One question though, any more books in your future, or is this a one and done? What do you feel?
It's not one and done, but I'm setting my sights on trying to see if somebody might want to turn it into a TV series.
Hmm.
And of course, the minute the book was at the publisher, all of these pages start coming out of the woodwork. I got something today from a guy named Hank Barr, who was there in '74, and he started telling me stories.
Hmm.
And I'm like, so I have a lot more stories to tell. And if you kind of think of the book kind of like Sex and the City meets Mad Men, it, it
That's
it's
good.
it's set in the '70s. It was kind of fun, kind of naughty, kind of exciting, kind of heady.
Hmm.
And it's told from a female point of view. It's not
Hmm.
a boy trying to make it in showbiz. It's a girl trying to make it in
Right.
showbiz. So hopefully you haven't heard the last of me.
Very cool. And as far as promotion for the book, are you doing any upcoming shows? I mean, I know you probably do other podcasts. I know you did the Johnny Carson podcast and things like that. I saw
Yeah,
that on
Mark
there.
Mark
Yeah.
Malkoff's podcast. If people want to hear history from a lot of different horses' mouths, I can recommend Mark Malkoff. He does a great show.
Yeah.
Um, by the time this airs, I will have done several book signings
Okay.
and a few other podcasts. None as wonderful as this one, of
Oh,
course. Uh,
thanks.
so I know that. Uh, but if people want to reach me, I would love to answer any questions people have or anything
Okay.
like that. Is my peacock tale at gmail.com. It's
Hmm.
tale Tale.
Hmm.
My website, which has all those glorious pictures on it, and I blog on it also,
Hmm.
mypeacocktale.com. And if
Okay.
you want me to come over and read the book to you, I can do that too.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll set a date like the dating game.
There you go.
Anyway.
Did I fulfill your fun quotient?
Yes,
Good.
very much. Okay. You mentioned more personal appearances, but they'd be done by this airs. Well, it's not that far. Anything in the spring or summer that's coming up that yeah you'd want to
I want to
promote?
try to get to New York
Okay.
in the spring, and I will, and certainly things will be posted on my website. But I have a really good friend of mine, Mark Summers,
Mhm.
who was the host of Double Dare, and
Oh
I
yeah.
worked with him writing game shows, and
Mhm.
he's like an amazing guy. He's so dirty off camera, I can't even tell you. But he's doing a one-man show in New York that opens on Valentine's Day and is supposed to run till June.
Okay.
And I'd love to get back and see him do the show and do some book signings while I'm back there too.
Very cool. Okay, well, I want to thank you, Shelley Herman, for being my
Thank
special
you.
guest. The book again is called My Peacock Tale. My life as an NBC Page. Is that the correct subtitle? I can't see it.
It's Secrets, My Peacock Tale,
Secrets.
Secrets of an NBC Page.
Okay.
Ooh.
And it's available from Bear Manor Media, and you can order your copies. It's probably through Amazon, through Barnes and Noble, and through their website, of course.
Yeah,
So,
you could certainly order it through Amazon, but if you want to support your local bookstores, please order it through them.
yes. All right. Well, again, thank you for being my guest today, Shelley Herman, and we will see you next time on the Fun Ideas Podcast.